as a business student, I didn't believe that I could get into the industry. Yeah, it's all connected. To be in an environment where everybody understands you immediately with no need of further explanation, that is not an easy place to find.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm thrilled to introduce not just a guest, but one of my closest friends. Farouk is someone I deeply admire and constantly learn from. Yeah, your insights have really shaped the way I see the world. We met about 1 year ago in Brazil, just over 1 year, but it feels like we've known each other a lot longer than that. So, Farouk, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, and thank you for all the nice words.
Sure, I have many more. Anyway, you have some tea for me here, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was my very small contribution because you worked so hard to get this set up. And I love all sorts of tea and coffee, especially coffee, but tea's also nice.
Yeah. So what are we drinking?
So for you, I have a sort of less caffeine, not no caffeine, but less caffeine tea, which is beautiful milky oolong, it's called.
Milky oolong.
Somehow it does taste like it has milk in it, but it doesn't. I think it doesn't, actually.
Camera here. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, first try. Here we go.
Should have gotten you the transparent cup. See, yeah.
Very
Hopefully
calming.
Yes, that's the point.
Okay, let's dive in. That was a metaphor. We're getting right into it. Okay.
Ooh.
You can scuba dive anywhere on Earth.
Yes.
You're not limited by time or resources. Where are you going? Where are you scuba diving?
Time or resources.
Yeah.
Okay. I already know that I want to do a live aboard.
A liveaboard.
What's
aboard?
a liveaboard? It sounds like we're saying liverboard.
Are you saying live abroad?
No.
Okay.
But it's live aboard, like aboard a ship.
Oh, okay.
And it's essentially a PADI organized trip where you live aboard a ship.
Got it.
For 2 weeks. Could be longer or a bit shorter. And they have those all over. So there's in the Red Sea, there's the Caribbeans, there's like many different parts of Asia, like in Indonesia or Thailand. Yeah. Probably that's tough. I'd either do the Caribbeans or like the Asia Pacific area. Maybe with a small leaning towards Asia Pacific, because then I could have amazing food after I get off the boat.
Right.
Because you know me, I'm into Asian food. Yeah. But yeah, that would be my choice. Okay. You can get like 20 something dives in those 2 weeks.
I see.
And just to give you a benchmark, I right now have a total in my 2 years diving career of 33 dives. Wow. So I could get like, 2/3 of my dives extra in
all in one trip
in 2 weeks. Wow. In one trip. So that would be definitely it's on the list for next year. Let's see if it happens.
Okay. What's the most amazing / awe-inspiring thing you've seen underwater while diving?
Okay. I think it's definitely, the Red Sea is the best place I've been so far.
Okay.
And I would say the most memorable dive, even though that's a pretty big thing to say because there was so many memorable dives in the Red Sea. Yeah. The one it's globally renowned, well known, it's called the Blue Hole in the Red Sea, in this little town called Dahab, which literally just means gold. Wow. Because of how beautiful the nature is there. So yeah, we go down. It was my last dive before my advanced certification. And you go down to about 26 meters below the surface. Okay. And on your right side is a wall full of life. Really? All corals. It's usually called a coral wall. And the level of detail that you can see when you approach it is like astounding. Really? Because from a little bit of afar, you see it as a whole object. It's just a wall with a bunch of nice colors on it, right? When you get close, you see the tiniest organisms. You see nudibranches. You see, which are like little worms, I guess you can call them. You can see a tiny fish poking its hole through a coral. You can see anemones, which is where Nemo comes from, right? And many other things. But beyond that, this wall extends more than your eye can see.
Oh, wow.
Into the deep abyss below.
And is it like vertical? Or
it's a completely vertical wall.
Can you see the bottom?
You cannot see the bottom.
Ooh.
That part of the Red Sea is at like 300 meters deep.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. Or maybe 160, it's 170. Anyway, it's way more than we could go as humans, let's say.
Right.
So you don't see the end of it.
Okay.
So you just have kind of juxtaposition of amazing beauty, but it's almost like it's goading you on to go deeper to see more.
Right.
But the more deep you go, the more into the abyss you go, which is also scary and dangerous.
Right.
So that kind of experience was definitely very memorable.
So it's just like wall life, and then before that, just abyss, or can you see other things in the
well,
the blue wall?
to your left, front and back, it's just open sea.
Right.
There's not much
and then
you can see.
Wow.
And then the wall. So really, you only have the wall to look at.
Okay.
And the rest is just sea.
So that was the Red Sea, which borders with Egypt, right?
It has like 4 countries around the Red Sea, but I was in Egypt. Yes, this was in Egypt.
Okay. What other sea would you have access to? The Mediterranean?
Mediterranean,
yes.
Is
there another one as well? Or?
Far less common for diving, I would say. At least on the Egyptian Mediterranean side.
Okay.
Those 2 seas are in Egypt. There's the Nile, but no one would dare dive there.
Okay.
It's filthy. And there's alligators in some parts.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to go there.
Yeah. You'd be deeper than they are, maybe. I don't know how deep those guys go.
I don't know. They do need to breathe after a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
what's the biggest thing that you've swam with, would you say?
I think it would either be a manta ray, or actually it was an eagle ray in the Pacific Ocean in Mexico.
Wow.
I think it was probably my width, but maybe 2/3 my height.
Okay.
It can be actually quite difficult to tell how big something is underwater because of the way light refracts through water and through the air in your mask before it hits your eyes.
Right.
It makes objects appear closer and larger than they actually are.
I see.
Which is very interesting. You're kind of used to it, but also not.
And that affects the color of objects as well, right?
Yes, but the color of objects is more affected by the fact that light gets absorbed differently at different depths.
Got it.
So the red part of the spectrum towards infrared gets absorbed first. And then the blue, purple gets absorbed last. So the deeper you go, it just becomes blue.
Right.
And actually what's super interesting is if you take a flashlight with you, which is why some divers take flashlights even in the day dives, you can, around 30 meters, everything just looks blue. Like you just applied a blue filter to the world.
Right.
But when you shine a flashlight, all of a sudden color reappears. And it's like amazing. It's like this one pocket of color in a sea of just blue.
Wow. Awesome. Cool. Do you have any rituals or superstitions before you dive?
I'm not a very superstitious person, so I don't have that. But I do have rituals, more practical rituals, I guess, which is literally like...
Just habits. Like.
You can call them habits. Maybe a softer word is needed there. Before every dive, I do have problems with one of my ears to equalize the pressure. So your ear pressure, your internal pressure has to be the same as the water surrounding you at the depth that you're at. Right? And so if your sinuses are blocked, then it's quite dangerous if you keep descending without clearing out that pressure or equalizing that pressure.
Right.
So if I'm really worried, I'll put, a hot towel over my face, try to open up my sinuses. I also apply salt nasal spray, which also clears out some blockages, let's say. blow my nose
Yeah.
with water, whatever. Like everything to just make sure all my sinuses are cleared.
What happens if there's that pressure imbalance and you start diving?
Well, you should stop if you
What
notice
does it
that
feel like?
it
Yeah.
feels like it's painful,
Okay.
and that it might implode at some point.
Okay.
So it's very bad.
That's not
It's
good.
a very serious thing to
Imploding
keep
is
going if
not
you're
good.
yeah, because the air you descended at a 1 bar of pressure, if you want to get technical about it,
Okay.
right? And every 10 meters you go, you add another extra bar.
Right.
So at 10 meters, there's 2 bar of pressure.
A bar being what we experience on the surface.
On the
of the
surface.
Earth, just one
Just
atmosphere.
that's the
right.
weight and pressure of the air.
The atmosphere with you. Got
Exactly.
It. Okay.
And
So
then
every
you go
10 meters you add another.
you add one
Okay.
more bar.
So you went 26. So
That would
3.6
be
bars.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, wait, you said 26. So yes, exactly.
Got it.
And if you don't equalize, imagine that your internal pressure is 1 and the external pressure is
No.
3.6.
There's been some pocket of air which
Yeah.
stays at the same pressure while you've gone down.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So it would be very bad if all of a sudden
Yeah.
that pressure equalizes violently. Your eardrums could rupture,
Oh no.
and then that's bad.
That would not be good.
So diving can be safe most
Yeah.
of the time if you follow the procedure and not respect what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're cautious. I don't want to scare anybody from diving here.
Mhm.
If anyone's listening to this,
Yeah.
diving is actually very safe.
Okay.
And you should train properly with a PADI instructor
Yes.
until you feel comfortable. But once you do, you honestly don't even think about any of that. It just becomes a natural part of your, a natural part of you, really.
Right.
It's like I don't really have to think about it so much now
Yeah.
that I've done. After maybe 15 dives, I can equalize without thinking about it. You just move your jaw and throat muscles.
Interesting.
And that actually pops open your ears, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting.
Yes. I've only done it twice, and both were in sort of training scenarios
Yeah.
in swimming pools, which is obviously, baby mode.
It's a good way to get started.
Yeah, but I found it very relaxing.
Yes.
Firstly, you can't breathe through your nose, which I didn't know beforehand.
Correct.
Totally ignorant of that.
Uh-huh.
So you come in and you only breathe through your mouth,
Mhm.
and you're sort of just forced to relax, to breathe slower,
Yes.
both to conserve
Mhm.
your oxygen
Yes.
and to relax yourself, because panicking
Yeah.
is the worst thing you can do, I imagine.
That's true.
Yeah.
I would love to one time, which I haven't done yet,
Yeah.
take, for example, an Apple Watch down there
Okay.
and just measure my heartbeat.
Yeah. How low do you think it would go?
I bet it would be way lower than my normal resting
Yeah.
heart rate
Yes.
because
You're breathing like once every
I am
10
most
seconds or
calm
something crazy.
underwater.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you actually take, depending on how you want to alter your buoyancy, breathing is actually the most significant way to do that.
Right.
That's how fish do it.
Right.
They like change a little bubble
Oh, yeah.
inside of
Bladder.
their exactly, and then
Right.
they rise and fall. We can do the same thing with our
Yeah.
lungs.
Yeah.
And so if I want, I can take a very deep breath
Mm-hmm.
and
Then we're
release
going
it
up,
very
right.
slowly to go up.
Got it.
Or if I want to stay at the same level, then I'll take shallow or medium breath in and release it in about the same speed
Interesting.
to maintain kind of neutral buoyancy.
Wow.
And that is the kind of meditative part,
Right.
because like you focus on your breathing. You can only hear yourself, your bubbles, and maybe some like clicks and clacks. It's hard to describe. It's
Yeah. Of your equipment hitting against things, or
it wouldn't be,
okay,
because you're streamlined, as the divers say,
right.
and you don't want to be hitting stuff while you're walking
True.
around.
But it's quite bulky, or at least it felt that way.
On the surface, it could be bulky, but when
Okay.
you get down there, everything's
the
floating.
pressure
So
kind of keeps everything together, or
I wouldn't say it's the pressure.
Okay.
It's just the water is lifting everything.
right.
You're weightless underwater,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you don't feel your own weight. You don't
Yeah.
feel the weight of your tank. Nothing.
But you're larger than you're used to
Yes,
walking around, so you have to be self-aware.
you do have to be aware of
what you're carrying.
what you're carrying and where all of your, instruments are.
Yeah.
And it's like frowned upon. If you're a beginner, it takes time to learn it.
Yeah.
But if you've been diving for 2 years, as I've been, for example, and you still don't know how to streamline your equipment so it doesn't keep hitting everything, then that's kind of frowned upon.
Okay.
It's a skill you should develop early on to protect the environment around you, and also to protect the stuff you're wearing too, right? But more importantly, the actual ocean environment.
Okay. I mentioned that we met in Brazil.
Indeed.
What did you learn about organizing a diving trip for, what was it, like 30 people maybe? Like actually diving?
The ones that actually dove were about 16.
Okay.
We had maybe 4 or 5 of those already having their licenses.
Okay.
Plus me, so maybe 6. And then the others, all new discovery divers, as we call them.
Wow.
That was awesome to me.
Okay.
There is nothing more exciting than inspiring others to do something you feel that everyone should experience.
Right.
And so it wasn't obviously organized that way at the beginning. It was more like, I am going diving, guys. If anyone wants to come, who is already a diver, feel free to come over.
Yeah.
But it was the first week of the program. Nobody really knew each other yet. The ice hadn't been broken. And suddenly a couple of like people who haven't done it before but still wanted to try joined in.
Yeah.
So it became a group of 15 or 16 total. Now we were going on the diving trip together, right? I'll just arrange 2 small buses. But kind of like a little snowball effect.
You underestimated the people of SSP.
I underestimated.
Wanted to have a good time.
Exactly. And how much, I think beyond just having a good time, I underestimated how much people wanted to be out of the school environment and to be in a more casual one.
Yeah.
And to really get to know people in a kind of a getaway. I'm assuming that was part of the motivation for some people.
Right.
Maybe everybody had something different they wanted to get out of it, perhaps. But I think that was a big part of it. So yeah, it was stressful, but also really exciting.
Yeah.
Because I definitely love logistics, especially planning trips. And so in 4 or 5 days, 50 people decided they want to come on this trip. So I started talking to like bus companies, 3 different accommodations on the island, the diving center, the ferry people to know how the ferry works. I've never been on this island. I know nothing about it. Right. Some of the locals gave me good tips from the program, and they helped with translation, which was very good. But
Shout
I still,
out Felipe.
yeah, yeah, that was the second trip to Ilhabela for sure. But no, seriously, that was a really cool experience to be able to help people break the ice like that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, because as I was on the trip, I was kind of worried if I was in your position, it would have stressed me the fuck out.
The first day was definitely more stressful than the second, because that's the day I had to worry about if people could sleep properly, and I had to be the last to go to bed to make sure that everybody was in bed before I went to bed.
Because you don't want to be diving on a shit sleep.
Yeah, you do have to have a really good sleep before you go.
That makes sense.
And I just didn't also like if I felt like it was my responsibility, because actually a lot of people there haven't ever traveled to a new country before.
Right.
And so I did feel extra responsibility.
Right.
And kind of like I was a little, let's say, parent for these inexperienced travelers. Like the ones who've been around, like I wouldn't worry about them, right? They'll figure their life out. But there was a large amount of people whose experience in traveling was quite low.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Broke the ice, got me a little bit of street cred, which is not a bad thing.
No.
And yeah, that was a good one.
What would you say SSP means to you now, 1 year later?
That's a really big question. Yeah, I think. Let's start with academically. academically, it did teach me the starting point of remote sensing and satellite observation stuff. I kind of knew already that that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Because it's the most commercially developed compared to like launch or Mars colonization, moon colonization, whatever. That's kind of still new.
Early days, yeah.
Early days for especially a business person.
Yeah.
So having gone to and specialized in space applications with Suyin, shout out Suyin, great teacher. And that definitely helped me land the job that I am in today with ICEYE, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes.
So that is one way that it meant a lot, because it was a great help in letting me achieve that dream of entering the space industry. That was my number one measure of success for whatever I invested into this university. It's like, if I can get into the space industry within a reasonable amount of time, actually 6 months was my goal, and it happened in 6 months. Wow. Exactly.
Okay.
Then it was worth it. But I got so much more out of it than just academically and professionally. Okay. The memories will live on forever, but even more than that, the friendships, right? To be in an environment where everybody understands you immediately with no need of further explanation, that is not an easy place to find or replicate. And I think a lot of us at that program have probably grown up with people who are very different around us, when we didn't necessarily vibe with, for many reasons. And so having felt my most true self at that program, where I could really just reveal 100% of who I was on day one, it's hard to describe how important that was. Yeah. Right? And now I have lifelong, I hope, friendships from this program, and people who I so deeply love. And if nothing else had worked out except that, it would be worth it. But it was so much more than that as well. So yeah, it was 1 year later, I can say it was really, really worth it. Yeah. And I would never change it for anything.
And you'd recommend?
I would recommend. Yeah. Although SSP23 Pride, I doubt anything will be as good as ours. But they will try. Yeah. They always say that the next SSP is going to be the best SSP. Yeah. And the Brazil was a really great location for it, for sure.
You've summarized my thoughts on it perfectly as well. Yeah. I think with such a program, the cost up front and the intensity, you're kind of selecting for people who can dream about what is possible. People who are not cynical. Yeah. People who believe that they can get lucky and that good things can happen in their life. And you feel it every day, I think, that optimism. True. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it definitely personally pushed me out of my comfort zone. I know you're extremely accomplished, I would say, this is my impression of you. Thanks. I would say your tolerance for stress, for organizing, and being in new environments is very high. Yeah. All the same, would you say that SSP pushed you out of your comfort zone?
That's a great question. I would say it pushed me a lot less than others. Okay. I have been in similar environments in the past with another organization called ICEYE, spelled AIESEC. Okay.
Get it right.
Get it right. Thank you.
It's kind of similar to ICEYE, by the way. It was like ICEYE.
Yeah, it's all connected. Yes. So that organization was the first where I really went out of my comfort zone. Okay. And so far in life, after that organization, few things have pushed me as much. So even though it was out of my comfort zone in the sense of space, things because it was all relatively new. Like the fact that it was this intense, we met this many amount of new people, and we were not sleeping that much and all that stuff. I've actually experienced all of that before in many other countries through ICEYE.
Yes.
So I would say it naturally, there were moments where I was uncomfortable or nervous and all that stuff, but I was, for the most part, fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, let's go a bit deeper, a little earlier in your life, maybe. What got you into space first? How old were you? Were you pushed into it, or were you kind of pulled into it? If you can catch the difference there, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Gravitational pull. Well, that is a long story. The first, I would say, memory of space, and this connects to the story which happened very recently when, you know, I shared that post about photographing my favorite place on Earth along the Mediterranean coast.
Yeah, we should get that story as well. But
sure.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a little teaser.
Okay.
For later down the line.
Yes.
That same location is where I saw my first shooting star.
Wow.
We were just walking with me, my brother, and 2 cousins.
How old were you?
Young. Younger than 10,
wow.
Probably.
Amazing.
So we were just walking along, seas in front of us, open sky above, and you saw like a, I want to say 2-second green streak in the sky, right? Yep. A nice, beautiful meteor. Can't remember which color is green. I want to say oxygen. Sounds right. Or was it nitrogen? Might be nitrogen. I don't know. One of those. I'm not a chemist. But anyway, green streak. I remember it very vividly. And that was my very first interaction of like, whoa, what just happened? You know? So I started looking up a little bit more. But being a child growing up in Cairo, you don't really see the sky, which is unfortunate. But I still remember that. And then I moved to Canada, forgot all about space, forgot all about the sea, 2 of my greatest loves today. So I kind of lost a lot of myself over there. But in other ways, I discovered something about myself too. Okay. Which is when when I was in high school in grade 9, I was just like, you know, trying to figure myself out because new environment, new people, new culture, huge culture shock moving from Egypt to Canada. Yeah. And then I remember some guy looking at me, was like, haha, you're so gay. And I was like, what is that word? I actually didn't know that at all. I've never heard this word before. So I had to look it up in the dictionary. Okay. So I went and looked it up and I was like, that's weird. I don't really identify with that word. So I don't know why he was saying that. Okay. So apparently they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
At that age, it just means different, right? Like,
I guess. Yeah, it's quite young, right? Yeah. But anyway, that triggered kind of, let's say, the first of a very long and painful journey when I had to figure out what that word meant and what it meant to me and who I was and all that good stuff, right? All throughout high school, I had told my parents, we agreed that I was going to try to convert myself to straight. Okay. They were going to help me with that journey, all for the sake of God, right? I was very religious as well back in the day.
You were?
I was very religious back in the day. Right. Devout Muslim. Did all my prayers. Fasted all the Ramadan days, sometimes even every Monday and Thursday. Wow. Throughout the years, and did everything by the book. And then when this whole thing started, at first I didn't really understand the implications it would have, so I didn't have any thoughts on my religion and how it conflicts with my sexuality. But in university, that's when things started to get a little more serious. Okay. By then I had already been trying to be straight for years, and it naturally didn't work. We had gone to a few doctors, some of which suggested hormone pills, which I luckily didn't take. because we know that really messes you up. I've watched The Imitation Game, which is it's referenced. That's actually how I knew not to take that.
I see.
Which just goes to show how important these kind of movies are for gay guys or gay people growing up.
Alan Turing, yeah.
Alan Turing, shout out. So anyway, back to the third year university. It's all coming to a head now. I had just kind of, let's say, my first intense crush or my first love at first sight.
Yeah.
Somebody I met in Egypt. I thought we had hit it off. I wanted to stay in touch with him after I'd left Egypt. But he then kind of started ignoring me when I left Egypt. Story of my life, right? And that's kind of started something. It started the downhill spiral of, okay, so I started really thinking about the future.
Yeah.
So I can't be with this guy.
Yeah.
I can't be with any guy because it conflicts with my religion. I can't be with a woman because physically things won't really work out.
Okay.
She'll probably feel like I can't perform my marital duties, if I may call them that.
Okay.
And then at the same time, it's not fair to her as well, right? In Islam, you are allowed to divorce, unlike some Christian religions.
Okay.
You are allowed to divorce, but then it's kind of like very difficult for a woman to remarry after a divorce.
There's some negative connotation.
There's a big negative connotation, right?
Stigma.
Very big stigma. So I would have effectively ruined a woman's life if I tried to change myself or force myself to marry a woman. And I was like, so I'm ruining my life, I'm ruining hers.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be huge pain for everybody involved. All the families, you know. Yeah. It's just not, it didn't seem like a valid option. So imagine feeling like there's a corner and all throughout your life you've been running around trying to avoid that corner. And then all of a sudden, like 5 different, I don't know, people show up with guns and they literally corner you in that corner and you can't escape. No matter which direction you look, you realize you can't run away, right? And that's exactly how I felt in third year university. I was like, every single option sucks. The option of losing my religion seemed impossible at that time, and like going to hell. I was like, don't want to do that. Okay, then the religion dictates I marry someone, but then I'm ruining both of our lives. Okay, then the other thing would be to live a life still devout, but single forever and miserable, right? Never marrying and never having any intimacy with anyone my whole life. And so those were my options, literally. The option of living my life, I wasn't actually considering that at the time. But after many months of depression in that third year university, almost failing school, almost being kicked out of university, which would have been a very big deal for me, I somehow managed to break out of it ever so slightly. And that's actually where space comes into the story.
Okay.
I was like almost like bedridden because of how depressed I was. I didn't leave the house for 3 months. Nobody knew because I was living in a separate apartment.
The way you described it is just so raw. Like, you're getting pulled apart from so many different angles. Your life doesn't make sense anymore.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't add up.
No.
The equation, like something actually needs to change, and it's not a small thing, it's something major.
Yes.
And how old were you at that point?
Third year would probably be 19.
Okay.
Yeah, between 19 and 20.
Big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what happened next?
So space enters the story.
Yes.
I'm depressed. I'm in my bed. I have my phone, right? Not texting anyone, by the way. I didn't feel like I could speak to anyone about this. So I was completely alone with these thoughts. Lights were off, windows were closed, you know, classic depressed vibes. And then as I scroll through YouTube, I don't know how, but I saw this lecture called something something by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Something about space. He has many lectures on there.
Yeah.
So I click on it, not really expecting much. It's like, this seems interesting. And it goes on for an hour. And the more he spoke, the more I was like, wow, there's a whole universe out there. And everything he said, I was like, wow, I kind of remembered maybe in some way that memory of space back when I was younger, and that shooting star, and how I used to be curious but then lost it.
Yeah.
And so that definitely triggered something in me that was perhaps innate. It was there, dormant, waiting to be activated or something.
Right.
So that went and sent me down a rabbit hole, a beautiful rabbit hole, where I watched almost every single lecture on YouTube of his. Yeah. Picked up the books. Yeah. Picked up some podcasts from him, and then started expanding into other science communicators. Brian Greene, Stephen Hawking. Amazing. James Green, some science, some interesting science articles that Neil deGrasse Tyson usually picks up and talks about. Right. So that's why it was so cool meeting him at SSP. But yeah, separate story. Sure. So anyway, that's where space started. And throughout that time, I was not so casually, maybe not casually is not the right word, passively or unbeknownst to me, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Unbeknownst to me, I was replacing one belief system with another. Right. One belief system was one true God, world was created by a divine being. We all have to do these things to go to heaven, and that was my purpose in life, is just to go to heaven, be good for God, be a good person, blah, blah. And then I slowly replaced that with, actually, it was everything that I believed as a Muslim was exactly the opposite of what space teaches you. Okay. So any religion, maybe the Abrahamic religions, teaches you that, humans are the most important thing on earth. This whole universe was created for us, and that your actions matter so much that God is always watching you and writing in his little book every deed you make, counting up all the good points and all the bad points.
Like Santa Claus.
Like Santa Claus. And if you have more good points than bad points, you go to heaven. If you have more bad points than good points, you go to hell. Okay. That was my whole existence. It's like making sure I had more good points than bad points. Right? Now, space taught me, at least the way I interpreted it, that I'm completely insignificant. The universe is so vast that if the entire Earth disappeared, no one would even notice. And so that was both freeing and terrifying. Because in one way it was like, so what if I live my life as a gay person? Like, who's even going to take notice? Like, my lifespan is, 80 years? If I put a random number out there. What is that in the span of human civilization of 6,000 years? What is that in the grand scheme of time in 3.5, 4.5 billion years? Yeah. Earth, more than that. Life. The universe, 13.6 something. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's like not even a nanosecond. No. That your lifespan is. Yeah. So that was also quite freeing. That's how I discovered space, and that's why it's so significant to me. Okay. Because without it, I would have had no reason to exist. And when you have no reason to exist, you get much darker thoughts. Okay. Luckily, I avoided those because of space. And I didn't necessarily have a God-ordained reason anymore. It was clear to me that there is no reason to be on this planet. It was more like we were here. But yet the fact that we are here is so amazing. Yeah. And so statistically unlikely. Yeah. That in itself is also profound.
So and that's enough. Insignificant and significant.
Yeah, and that's enough to make you feel that you should treasure what your life will be and work on it and appreciate every little moment because of how rare and unlikely it is to be alive right now. Yeah, so that's how I would describe that journey.
And this replacement of one belief framework for another was the primary driver of that one of these systems accepts me for who I am and the other does not at all? Or was it a more broad, like, I just appreciate this way of thinking more, this toolbox to understand the world? You just enjoyed it more, it suited you more. Or was it only, I need to find a group which accepts me?
Yeah. I would say that losing my religion was not necessarily because of my sexuality only.
Okay.
It was more so that being gay allowed me to question my religion for the first time. Growing up religious, you are not allowed to ask questions. Wow. You have to just take what's written in the book as truth. Yep. What your priests tell you as truth, or your imams in this case, as truth, right? And if you ask too many questions that are doubtful, they just say, God knows best, or God knows, you don't have to, we don't have all the answers, but God knows best. Yeah. And eventually you kind of get tired of that answer. Right. Especially when you start asking a lot of questions. So I didn't all of a sudden, like, in one night be like, okay, I'm not Muslim anymore, I'm an atheist now. It took years to get to me labeling myself as such. Okay. I know some people who would live religious and gay. That was not for me. Okay. Because I don't like to live on the fence, I would say. Right. If the religion is built about hating who I am and rejecting everything that I am, it doesn't make sense to continue. But if I still believed in God, I would find a way. It just so happens that after space came into the picture, it made me see the scientific way of life. And I think science and religion are just so inherently incompatible, because one relies on faith and lack of evidence, and the other one is completely based on evidence and what you can prove.
Belief in the absence of evidence.
Yeah,
would be religion.
That's religion. And that I just didn't really want to continue living my life like that, or with that kind of mindset.
I can see some parallels between your love of space and your love of diving, for example. Both are about exploring the unknown, but also just the void, the spaces between things. Have you noticed that in yourself as well? And okay.
Yes, I have. I think the analogies are always there. Yeah. The vast open sea, the vast...
It's not coincidental, is it? Like, there's something there.
There's a very good reason why people compare the two, I would say. Right. And it's absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, the fact that astronauts are always training underwater is already a testament, right? There's plenty of space analog or astronaut analog missions that take place underwater. Yeah. Not just to test the microgravity environment, but just the feeling... the psychological feeling of being surrounded by emptiness, not seeing anything around you. Yeah, that is pretty much the same. The only difference would be underwater, far more pressure. In space, no pressure at all, except in your suit, I hope. So that's kind of the only thing that's not analogous as such. But even like the things you have to watch out for are the same. Decompression sickness, for example, is something that happens both in space and here, and here underwater. And just like watching your breathing and being able to be calm under stress. That's all also relevant in both cases. So yeah, for many reasons, space and the ocean are the same, even though it's kind of different. Yeah. it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Okay. Let's go back to the story of how you switched from religion to science. I think that's a fairly succinct way of putting it, but it has some truth to it.
Yeah.
So one of the main utilities of being a religious person, you could say, is that it comes with a moral framework and also it gives a meaning to your life.
Yes.
So in the absence of that, what have you done to still have meaning in your life?
Yeah.
Now that you're an atheist.
Right. I think the meaning question is always kind of unanswered. I've kind of split up my mind, my way of thought, into two different categories.
Interesting. Okay.
You have the objective world, where you try to remove all emotion and human error and just look at the facts.
Yeah.
And then you have the subjective experience, right? From an objective point of view, the way I see it is that, as I said, our lives don't really matter that much, right? Even the most significant humans who live on to this day in terms of their legendary status, eventually their effects are unfelt, and all of humanity doesn't really matter that much. That's how I see it. Because of how small our planet is compared to the size of our universe, even the size of our galaxy.
Okay.
So that's the objective side of things.
Yeah.
It's like the objective side is telling me that whatever I do, it's like,
Yeah.
you know. But then the subjective experience biases you to believe that you are the most important thing in the universe because you're the only person experiencing your life in a way.
Yeah.
I can't feel what you feel necessarily. I can empathize perhaps, but I'm not going to get in your head or experience life from your eyes and your viewpoint. So you have these two incredibly opposing views hosted in the same mind. And I wish I could remember who said this quote. I don't. We can look it up later.
Sure.
But it's like a test, and then I'm paraphrasing, a test of a first-rate intelligence or something like that is to be able to host two opposing views and still be able to function.
That sounds like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Maybe we'll confirm that later, but
I don't think it was.
Oh, you don't?
I know his quotes, but I wouldn't say it's him.
Okay. I could just hear him saying that in my mind, but it's a great quote.
I could also hear him saying that, but it's someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're a first-rate intelligence, is what you're saying.
No, but I strive to be.
I think you are, but yeah. Anyway. Okay. Okay.
You can only strive to be such. I think if you start saying that you are this great intelligent mind, then it just shows how ignorant you are.
Interesting.
Because the more you learn about the world, the more you can see how much you actually don't know.
True. Yeah.
This is a Neil deGrasse Tyson quote.
Okay.
Which just says, the more you expand your area of knowledge, the more the perimeter of your ignorance expands.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
It's in a way,
true.
True in the not geographical sense, but the geometric sense. That's the word I'm looking for. Right. True in the geometric sense. You know, I'm having a larger area of knowledge, but the perimeter keeps getting bigger and bigger to what I could learn. Beyond my horizon, there's always more knowledge than what I've accumulated.
The perimeter there would grow slower than the area, for what it's worth. But
fair enough. Fair enough. But they are both growing.
True. That is true.
But yeah, so. Where were we before this digression? Something about the two objective. Okay, so objective and subjective, right?
Yeah.
So I try to bring a little bit of subjective flavor into my thought process every now and then, and that's the part that gives life meaning.
Okay.
Because even though I have that objective, factual side of how insignificant my life is, then I throw a little bit of subjective spice in there, if you will. And the subjective side tells me that my life is the most important thing, and that living it to the fullest, given that I only have one of this currency, is so important. And because I have only one life, I need to experience as many lives in that one life as possible. So really that's what gives me meaning, is like acknowledging the fact that I have one incredibly short life. And the only way to make it count is to meet as many people as possible, learn as much of the world as possible, travel as much as possible, eat all the possible foods out there that I can, and everything else in between, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that's where I derive meaning, is just making it count, the pursuit of happiness, making other people happy where I can, spreading love to my friends and all that good stuff. Yeah, but those two sides will always pull on each other, I would say. Like, realizing how lucky I am to have this life, but also realizing at the same exact moment that it's actually a very insignificant, unimportant life at the same time. It doesn't make sense, but it really does at the same moment. And that's just something I have to live with.
Yeah. But do you think that happiness and meaning can be at odds with each other sometimes? Like, sometimes the thing you assign meaning to in your life and in striving for that thing can go against your, at least short-term happiness. Or do those generally align for you?
Okay, I will say that truths cannot be debated. Okay. Facts cannot be debated. Interesting. Right? That's why you can debate how you arrived at the fact. If we thought something was factual and it turned out that it's not.
But just like a data point, you can't argue with.
Just like you measured that a
coordinate or something.
Temperature of the water is 18 degrees on this day. Yeah. You can't just come and say no, it wasn't. Okay. Because you have the instrument there that it says. You can argue that the instrument was faulty or whatever, and fine, that's separate.
Your phone is taking some tumbles.
Yeah, it's gone.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, but let's assume, for the sake of this argument, that the instrument is good, right? So the fact is the fact. The water is 18 degrees. Yeah. All right. So the facts cannot be debated. However, what does this fact tell you? What does it mean? Why is it the way that it is? That's where the subjective part of like deduction comes in, right, and your interpretation of the fact comes in. And so every fact that I've seen from space, from science, where me as a human comes in, as a conscious, thinking, curious human comes in, is like, how do I interpret this fact? So the fact that our human lives are insignificant, for me, that's an indisputable fact. Okay. But there are two ways to react to that fact. Yeah. One way to react is like, my life is meaningless. Let me jump off a building and just end it right here, right? That's one very valid conclusion. Yeah. Sad one, but it is valid. The other conclusion is the opposite exactly, where it's like, yes, my life kind of is meaningless, but it's also very short, and I kind of feel happy being alive. Yeah. And so let me switch that on its head a little bit and say, the fact that my lifespan is short is actually more of a reason to live it to the fullest. And so the interpretation of facts is where the human part comes in. Okay. But it should start from an objective point. Okay. And then we take that objective fact and turn it into how we should react to it.
And in terms of happiness, for example, do you think there's an objective way to measure happiness, or is that...
Oh, no, for sure not. Okay. There are many happiness surveys out there, but they're crap.
Yeah, well, like Finland here, for example.
Oh, yes.
Finland, 7 years in a row?
7 years in a row.
Happiest country.
Happiest country on earth. Yeah. Every time you ask a Finn how they feel about this survey, they will always laugh at your face and be like, I don't know about that.
I'm not happy.
I'm not happy. Like, what are they talking? They didn't ask. Actually, the most common response I got is like, they didn't ask me if I was happy. They just decided I was without asking me, right? Which is not really...
On average, they've decided.
Yeah, they just decided. And yeah, those are like quality of life metrics that don't necessarily denote happiness. They might support happiness. For example, correlate to it. You have a roof over your head, decent salary, your children are being taken care of by the state. If you need support, like in a nursery or something. all of that could help you be happy, but it doesn't mean that you're happy, right?
Yeah.
So happiness is innate, and every person is going to be happy from a different thing, and it is up to the individual to value their life enough to pursue their own answer of what makes them happy.
Yeah.
I've become very good at knowing what makes me happy.
Okay, so the things that make you happy are innate, but you understand those things, what they are, more now. Because like, if you say something is innate about you, to me that would imply that it doesn't change throughout your life. You can disagree with that if you'd like, but if something is innate, yeah, it would suggest it wouldn't change. But there are ways you can become happier in life. There's mental habits that you can form, which make you overall a happier person on average.
Well, let me change the word. I would say happiness is, let's say, intrinsic, maybe is the word I wanted to use. Like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and happiness. So like intrinsic is you don't look for something outside of your control to make you happy or motivated.
Okay.
So for instance, self-achievement. Like I like to always achieve the next thing. That makes me happy. Feeling like I've done something better, I've grown as a person. That's kind of a form of intrinsic motivation. Yeah. The extrinsic motivation would be like your employer giving you an extra €1,000 if you do this thing. Yeah. So that's kind of like the money, right? We all need money in our life, but I find that it's not so much money makes me happy, but the experiences that money might enable make me happy. Okay. Sometimes I can get those experiences without money. Yeah. And in any sort of decision criteria, if I'm doing a lot of trade-offs, the intrinsic motivators win over the extrinsic motivators. Okay. So I could take a pay cut, but be surrounded by, people that I love or like people that would challenge me, to be in a healthy work environment, to have flexibility in my role. All of those I would kind of classify as intrinsic things. Okay, but those are external to you. With it. You think they maybe influence what your intrinsic beliefs, intrinsic motivations are? Yeah, because for example, if I have that flexibility, it allows me to see my friends more often. It allows me to experience the world instead of being locked up in an office. You know what I mean? So and another way is like you don't need other people, or you don't need something outside of you to tell you what should make you happy. Okay. So I don't need a marketer to come and tell me if you buy this thing, you'll be happy. Some people fall for that, right? Whereas for me, it's like experiencing life, spending quality time with friends, and growing as a person, improving on my skills and hobbies. All of that, I kind of see it as like I'm the driving force here in my happiness, if you want to phrase it that way instead, versus people cheering me on, right, or kind of someone pulling you towards a certain direction or whatever it is. So the pursuit of happiness comes from you. Yeah. You should define through experimentation usually what makes you happy, and then reflecting on things you do. Was I happy? Will this make me happier or less happy if I do this thing? If I meet this person, if I spend time with this friend or not, whatever. So it's definitely not an easy thing to do. It's a lifelong project. It's a lifelong project, and it's like a value that you can have. It's unfortunately true that some people just don't value their happiness enough to chase it, to question what makes them happy. They value other things like security in life. Like they don't want their life to change. They just want to be stable forever. And they might be aware of some things that make them happy, but they feel it's out of reach. Or something scares them too much. Or it scares them too much to take that risk. And so their value is more like being risk averse and just like staying where they are. yeah, I'm not really like that as well.
Yeah.
So
I see
I'm
that.
not sure if that answered your question, but
I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. Do you think there's a tension between this desire to grow and get better and improve every day and self-acceptance? Like, is there a point, do you think, where you will say, okay, I've done enough growth, I've become the person that I wanted to become all this time ago, and I don't need to work as hard anymore? Or like, at what stage do you think acceptance should take hold? Can you both accept yourself and grow in an aggressive way?
Oh yeah, definitely you can.
Okay. Oh, you think?
The mentality, the healthiest mentality, I think, is to always to have gratitude and to be satisfied, content of what you've achieved thus far and where you are in your life thus far, while acknowledging that it can be better. So it's not so much that the next step will make me happier because now I am miserable, sad, unhappy, whatever. It's more that, like, I'm always going to be happy with what I have today.
Okay.
I've somehow developed that mentality. And it's possible I could be happier, and I'm going to chase that feeling. Even if I don't get there, though, I'm already happy now. I already have everything I need now.
Yeah.
And so, and it's kind of like practicing gratitude of, like, wow, you know, I have all my senses. I have a good life. I have a great job. It's true that I would rather, for example, own this apartment than rent it. I would rather be in a different type of job role than I'm in today. I would rather, I don't know, have more money so I could fly and see my friends more often that are scattered all over the world. That doesn't mean that I should look at that future possibility and be like, damn, because I don't have that now, that makes me sad. Not really. It's more like, it's great, it's perfect almost now, but it can get better.
Right.
So
it sounds like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. It is. And nice. I always wish that people would be able to get there, to bring themselves to see how lucky they are to have what they have. And in that moment, you're satisfied, you're content, but you also do not settle or get complacent.
Right.
So if you can achieve both of those things, I think you can have a very powerful mentality.
Right. This is one of the things that you've taught me in my life. I'm glad we can share it with other people as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So we're currently in Finland.
Indeed.
At the moment, in Espoo. And you've been kind enough to show me around the office where you work.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you work, how long you wanted to work in a place like this, and what you do every day.
Wow. Okay. So let's see, where do we start? So I've lost at some point in my life, I've lost my passion for space when I was in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
And then it rekindled after the whole gay epiphany, let's call it. But I just wasn't, as a business student, I didn't believe that I could get into the industry.
Right.
My viewpoint was that the industry is for engineers, for scientists. There's no room for anybody else. However, when I was a digital nomad for 2.5 years, living in many different countries, working remotely, I was traveling with my now ex in Croatia, and I had just quit my online Canadian job. I was not satisfied. It was boring. I was not learning anything. After 5 months, I left that. I was looking for jobs to replace the other one, and I did find one by a very well-known space company called Planet.
Okay.
Right, it has the largest fleet of optical satellites in the world.
Okay.
They're doing some great stuff. Shout out to Planet.
Okay.
I got all the way to the offer stage. They were going to give me a very good role. However, they needed me to move to Germany. They told me I could still work remotely from Germany, but I had to be physically registered there, have an apartment there, and be there for kind of like 6 months of the year or something like that.
Yeah.
Still flexible, but anyway, we had to be based there.
Mm.
At the same moment, my ex got on his dream job, which would have had us move back to Iceland. He was going to be a teacher. It was going to be great for his career. First teaching job he would get, right?
Yeah.
Very important. It was also my dream job to work in the space industry.
Yeah.
And so we were faced with these two possibilities. And at that time, we were going through a rough patch, and I wanted to prove to him that he matters more to me than anything else.
Yeah.
So I told him, you know what, forget it. I'm going to tell the company that if they can't hire me from Iceland, it's just not going to happen.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So I went back and I told them.
Right.
They considered it, but they said in the end they can't do it. So they took the offer away.
Wow.
And we moved to Iceland. So there goes my dream job.
Dream job, yeah.
Right? However, I had proved to myself by getting to the offer stage that as a business student, business person, I can actually work in the space industry because I got there. It was just like the final thing that didn't work out. It was more of like a logistics issue. So that's what got me started to think seriously about, hey, I am going to do this now.
Okay.
I'm going to set my sights on the space industry, and I'm figuring out how to get there. So this was in May 2022 when I got that offer letter. 2 months later, I search, how do I get into the space industry as a business person? That was my like kind of keyword on Google.
Yeah.
Right. Few research results later,
Yeah.
I went to the second or third page of Google. That's how desperate I was.
Okay.
Right, to
Yeah.
find the answer. No one goes to the first page.
Yeah.
Right. And I found this very obscure blog written on some random website I've never heard of.
Yeah.
That happened to talk about the SSP program. It was written by Gary Paul, ISU alum. And
SSP when? Do you know?
wasn't that long before us. I want to say 14, 16, something around that.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. But he had written in that he was a business person, wanted to switch up his career, and found ISU, did it, then switched to the space industry. I cannot tell you how important that was for me to see.
Wow.
Because I was like, that's actually my story.
Yeah.
I was like, that's my future story.
Right.
In that moment, I was like, I want to do like Gary did. So then I reached out to ISU, to Nassim from admissions. And I was like, I would like to apply for this program. Do you think my background would be a great fit? I explained my background, and he was very encouraging. He was like, actually, we're always looking for people like you. And I was like, well, really? Okay, that surprised me. I was like, but all right, I'm going to do it then.
Yeah.
So this is in August now.
Yeah.
Few months later, I'm in Huatulco, Mexico. December 2022. I write my admissions letter to the program, which included the whole story I just told you. Everything about this shooting star, discovering who I was through space,
Really?
replacing my religion with space.
Wow.
I poured my heart out on that application letter.
Amazing.
Probably one of the best things I've ever written, by the way. Maybe I should post it alongside this podcast.
I'll attach it.
It was a really good one-pager.
Heartfelt, for sure.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to kind of show off a little bit, I called it the non-mathematical constant. That was my title. And I said, even though space has many constants, like,
Gravity, speed of light.
Speed of light, for example.
Gravity wouldn't be constant. Sorry. Yeah. Speed of light. Okay.
Speed of light, for example.
Yeah.
I can't remember the others that I put on there.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's quite a few well-known ones. The non-mathematical constant was space's ability to inspire generations. And it inspired me forever. And through my whole life, it will continue to inspire me.
That's nice.
So that was kind of what I wanted to include on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the story.
Yeah.
So I write the admissions letter. I get in the acceptance letter in March 2023, and I join the program.
Yeah.
Fast forward, finish the program.
Yeah.
In August of 2023, I'm starting now to make applications into the space world. I apply to many things, one of which is ICEYE, but that only happened in November. As I was applying for ICEYE, I was doing like a Euro trip, doing a conference in Italy, conference in Spain, really just trying to get that job. And I was getting a bit worried because my 6-month deadline was approaching by that time.
Yeah.
No prospects really.
Yeah.
But in some way I had this belief that it would work out. So that kept me going a little bit. I was like, you know what? I always kind of achieve what I want because I never give up, and I fail many times before I get there, sure.
Yeah.
But I have the persistence of, a fly that wants your lunch. Like it'll always come back no matter how many times you shoo it away.
Yeah.
So I did get rejected a lot in that 6 months period, from all the conferences, from all the job applications. I don't even know how many job applications and cover letters and resumes I submitted. Yeah. So I found ICEYE. Perfect job was posted, business development representatives. I thought I should be a shoo-in for this. Like, I've done BDR jobs so many years. I've done sales roles for 6 years. I was like, if anything, I'm overqualified,
Yeah.
So I applied for the job.
Yeah.
A week later, I got rejected. No interview.
Okay.
Right? Nothing.
That's rough.
So I was like, damn, this was my last hope, kind of. So I was like, if this really doesn't work out, I'm going to have to start becoming a little bit more practical, because I'm going through my savings. I'm spending a lot. It's not sustainable. But here's what I did. Before this job opened up, I had spoken to 2 ISU alums at ICEYE.
Okay.
Right. One is called Jasper.
Yeah.
In Poland.
Yeah.
And the other is Jeffrey.
Okay.
Actually, Casper and Jeffrey. I mixed up their 2 names. I merged their 2 names.
Okay.
Casper and Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey also, I reached out to him before the application and after I had gotten rejected for the application.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Jeffrey, I got rejected for this. I thought I should at least have an interview. Can you find out what happened? And he was really, really nice. He was like, yes, I'll ask around.
Okay.
So yeah, I got the interview, 15 minutes of like prep. It's kind of like, it's October now and I'm in Manchester, right? I'm all over the place in Europe. Or perhaps it was early November, something like that. I get the first interview, then the second interview. The second interview I did in Drogheda when I was with Hannah.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So I did every single interview at a different time with a different beautiful SSP person.
Interesting.
My first interview, the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I applied for the role with Elena in
Brazil.
In Italy. I visited her.
Sorry. Okay.
So I applied to that role with Elena.
Okay.
Which I then got rejected
Okay.
a few months later or a few weeks later or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I applied again, got the first interview with Kurt, who was a friend of mine from university in Manchester. The second interview I did in Drogheda with Hannah.
Yeah.
The third interview
is perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The third interview I did in London at my hostel in London there with people who became fast friends at that hostel.
Yeah.
And then the fourth interview was in the same place.
Okay.
So really it was kind of like a mental and physical journey of all these 4 interviews. Yeah. Like shortly after New Year's, they come back and they say, we want to hire you in Finland. Wow. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm coming. Yeah. Like, yes.
Coming.
And so, exactly. So I said yes.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, not even, like a month and a half later, I was in Finland.
Wow.
Okay, that was a very long story about how I got to ICEYE and why it's so important, and the fact that it wasn't such an easy actually journey.
Yeah. Okay, so now tell me about ICEYE.
Yes.
What does it do? Why is it such a cool company?
Yes.
Why do you love it so much?
Yes, so ICEYE is a SAR satellite manufacturer.
Okay.
If I want to say it in the boring way. SAR satellite stands for synthetic aperture radar. It doesn't use cameras using the visible wavelengths that we would see as humans, right? It uses microwaves.
Right.
If anybody is a nerd out there and wants to know what band we use, we are in the X band, which is, I think, between 5 to 8 centimeters of wavelengths. Okay.
So is that what the synthetic refers to? It's that it's outside the optical range?
No, actually. So the synthetic let me, if I want to answer that, I have to go back a few steps. So radar satellites were huge back in the day.
Right.
And even though they were still SAR, because you can't really have a real aperture radar up there, because you would need an antenna that's probably like a kilometer long to actually capture a decent resolution image on the surface of the Earth.
To do active.
Yes. You would need a very, very long antenna.
Right.
And that's just not feasible.
Yeah.
How can you get something like that in space?
Got it.
Right? So the synthetic part comes in by putting some length of antenna up there. Ours just happens to be, 3-something meters, 3-point-something meters. Yeah. And it goes up there. Yeah. And it takes multiple pictures over one acquisition. Okay. I think 2 or 3 usually. Yeah. And so it stitches those together. And because the satellite is moving, you extend the antenna synthetically by taking a 3-meter picture, then another 3-meter picture, then another 3-meter picture. Right. And that goes on for a few pictures as the satellite is moving, which then generates a one composite image. Okay. And it is as if you had a massive antenna up there, but you don't. Right. So that's what the synthetic aperture part means. Amazing. Yes. Okay. And so your kind of strip or swath, as it's called, on the ground ends up being what you want it to be if you had a real aperture radar up there. Got it. So that's what SAR is all about. Okay. Cool. So that's what we do. ICEYE pioneered the miniaturization of SAR satellites. Because again, before they were huge, multi-million-dollar satellites. They were like hundreds of millions of dollars just to get one up there. Right? If it fails, that's bad. Yes. And you only had like 1, 2, 3 up there because of how expensive and big they were. You couldn't really form a big constellation of them. So we have launched almost, or actually I feel like we just hit 40 satellite launches since our founding, which is huge. Huge milestone. And it's just going to keep getting better and more from there. So now we have the largest, and we have had the largest SAR constellation for many years. And we own and operate that full constellation ourselves. We manufacture ourselves. The whole vertical supply chain we take care of. Nice. We manufacture, we assemble, we test and integrate, we ship it to usually SpaceX to then launch the satellite on the transporter missions most of the time. Right.
So it's not in a geostationary orbit, is that fair?
Yes, they are in LEO. So they're in LEO, okay. Yeah.
All 40 or?
Most remote sensing satellites operate in LEO. Got it. There are a couple of different orbits.
Of being in LEO for SAR?
Well, the thing about LEO is you can, first of all, see closer. Sure. As an engineer, you could explain this much better, but there is something about resolution trade-off that isn't the same with an optical satellite as it is with a radar one. And I couldn't explain it. But when I looked on the SAR videos, right, in the instruction stuff, apparently if you took the radar further away, you could still get a high resolution image and not sacrifice that. But something else would be sacrificed.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like say something incorrect.
That's all right.
But there are other advantages for LEO.
Okay.
You can have very high revisit rates. So you orbit every 90 minutes, for example.
Yeah.
You're not going to get to the same place in 90 minutes with one satellite, obviously. Yeah. But you make a full rotation every 90 minutes.
Okay. And the advantage there is you get faster updates on a specific location on the Earth? Or is it about getting finer resolution?
So the advantage of a quick orbit like that is that once you form that constellation, the cumulative effect is that you're going to have faster revisit rates.
Right.
Because since the Earth is orbiting, right, your orbit stays the same.
Okay.
But the Earth is orbiting, and so
it's rotating. You mean?
Sorry, yes,
Okay,
rotating. That's what I meant. So the Earth is rotating. Your orbit is the same.
Yeah.
And after that 90-minute goes by, since the Earth is rotated, you're then imaging something else, another part of the world.
Okay.
But then another satellite will get to that same spot that you want to image again.
Yeah.
Within usually 3 hours. That's kind of our revisit rate right now. In most places.
And what is the advantage of having a high revisit rate?
So you can detect changes much better.
That's cool.
In emergencies, which we specialize in a lot in ICEYE, like natural catastrophe monitoring, floods, wildfire, earthquakes, hurricane, etc. Being able to send new data frequently allows disaster responders, more on the ground insights. And so that is a huge benefit that only something like ICEYE could provide.
Right.
Another advantage, not to LEO, but to radar, is that it's an active sensor, which means that we don't care if the sun's out, quote unquote.
Okay.
So if it's nighttime in that part of the world, we can still see what's going on.
Right.
Because we send out those beautiful microwaves. They come to the surface, they scatter. That scatter bounces back to the radar, which then uses the time delay of the light speed travels this much distance, and we get both a kind of a brightness value of how bright every object was. And when I say bright, I mean how much light it scattered and returned to our satellite versus didn't.
Okay.
So for example, if your angle is kind of facing a mountain peak, and that mountain peak usually would appear very bright, that means, it has returned a great deal of the radar wave back to the satellite. Anyway, so my point is we can see at night.
And through clouds?
Through clouds. Right. Our wavelengths are bigger than a water molecule.
So they don't diffract.
So they just kind of pass through it. And same thing with volcanic ash. If we're trying to look at volcanoes, we can see through that. If there's a wildfire, we can see through that fire haze as well. And so there are many, many advantages to SAR. Again, if an engineer were here, they would tell you that we can also polarize our waves in a different way. And that allows something called the phase of the wave to be analyzed, which you can get some other information from. Don't ask me why that's significant, because I don't know.
About ice, maybe? Like if you reflect light off ice, it might come back polarized in a way that tells you something about it. Or a more
Not
context.
so much.
Okay.
So phase means which part of the wave is the one that came back.
Yeah.
Almost
It's
like
incident
where
on-
in the peak and trough
Got it.
it is.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really know what they use in that sort of analysis, but that's one of the benefits is you can get more kind of different type of data.
Okay.
So you can have, you know, horizontal polarization. You can have
Yeah.
vertical. You can have horizontal vertical, and vertical horizontal. VV, HH, VH,
Okay.
HV, something like that. It's literally imagine a slingy, you know, and if I'm
What's a slinky?
slinky.
Slinky, sorry.
That
The
like
spring
metal thing
Yeah, yeah,
that you so that's really usually a good analysis that I
Okay.
try to use to understand.
Yeah.
So if I take a slinky and I have kind of a sheet over here and it extends from this side of the table to your side of the table, I am now shaking it up and down
Right.
in a vertical way.
Yeah.
Inevitably, some of my movement might be horizontal. So it's going to have both horizontal motion and vertical motion. If I only want to preserve the vertical motion of the wave, I'm going to put something kind of in the middle there that is going to polarize that wave.
Got it.
And by that, it just simply means it's going to eliminate the horizontal motion and only leave the vertical motion.
Right.
So that allows the light reflecting, scattering to be different. And it shows you different properties. What is it? I don't know.
Okay.
And the same thing. So our own sensors is what's doing this.
Okay.
So our own sensor, we have the control to change the type of wave we want to send out.
Cool.
So because it's an active sensor, once again, we control, you know, what polarization we want to be using depending on what we want to see.
Okay. And is this another competitive advantage?
This is another advantage of a radar satellite versus an optical satellite.
Got it.
Optical satellite is passive, so you just rely on what the sun is sending out
Right.
and how that light is reflected back.
Right.
Versus us
Being your own son.
being control, we are our own sun, correct?
Right.
So that's another big advantage that I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But
It's okay. I'll
but
put in
I,
like a caption of.
yeah, exactly. I'm
fill in
sure
the details
someone somewhere
Yeah.
who's an
I
engineer
don't know
would
either.
know exactly what I'm talking about and would elaborate much better than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, there's a really good video
Okay.
by an ex-ICEYE employee.
Okay.
I think his first name is Maxime, but I can't remember his second name.
Okay.
If you just Google,
I'll link it. Yeah. What's it called?
if you just Google, if you put Maxime SAR ICEYE, I think it would come up because I can't remember the caption of the YouTube video. You might find it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So more important than the technology,
Yeah.
or perhaps equally as important as the technology, is what we do with it.
Yes.
Right.
What's the value that this data provides?
There are many use cases. My little niche is, again, the disaster, natural catastrophe monitoring part.
Okay.
We sell them into two main verticals right now, but we'll grow. And by verticals, I mean like industries. One of which is insurance.
Okay.
So insurance industries want to know which insured property was flooded, which areas are more prone to flooding, for example, and that sort of thing. So our data and historical data can help with that.
Okay.
We take pictures during a flood, our analysts look at them, and then we deliver a flood footprint of where the flood has been and how deep the water was.
Right.
Insurers use that, and governments use that at the same moment. So
You have
governments
some
would
government
use
customers.
that. We have a lot of government customers around the world,
Nice.
and usually it's like a disaster response part of government.
Right.
So civil defense, usually civic defense, police, fire brigades, etc.
Okay.
Also scientific organizations around the world would be using that
Lovely.
for research, for improving climate models,
Yeah.
etc. So we deal a lot with that. There are other things that they could be used for, but this is my own niche. Like the first thing you learned in remote sensing course at SSP is that the sexy part is the satellites,
Yeah.
but equally as important are the ground stations, the ground component as it's called.
Okay.
And so your satellites, they're flying over, the image they just took, it needs to be downlinked, let's call it, downloaded down to the earth.
Yeah.
And that's where actually all the processing happens.
Right.
So the image is taken at processing level 0, as it's known.
Okay.
And there are like 3 levels of image processing that can go into it.
Yeah.
So 0, it starts at 0, and then level 1 is when it sort of begins to be usable, but it's still considered kind of raw.
Okay.
2 is like you can actually start sending it out to people, and they can deduce things from it.
Okay.
They can get some information from it.
Yeah.
And 3 is like you've added very like high amount of analysis, which is like this is literally where the flood was, and you have the answer right away from the data.
Okay.
So to our insurance and government customers, we give them the end result. We don't give them the raw SAR image. There are some other customers who take just the image, but that's a different business line that I don't really deal with. So I'm sure we work with certain cloud-based data providers.
Yep.
That's how these companies usually do it. And then that's like the storage of the actual data. Then we process it in some way. Our analysts make sure that they get those levels up from 1 until 2 and make it usable.
Yeah.
And then once it's usable, it gets sent to another team that look at then the flood component of it, like how deep the water was, and referencing our digital terrain models and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
All the other data points that go into flood mapping. That's like another big topic. So yeah, there's a big team of manual work that needs to be done, of like SAR experts, and then meteorologists, and hydrologists that know how water works and how it flows, and like all of that stuff needs to happen to get to the end product. So there is automation for sure, but most people would be surprised to know that there's still a large human component that hasn't really been replaced yet.
Okay.
And even with the AI advancements and machine learning, which we do use, it's complementary rather than replacing what human analysts would do.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. In your day-to-day job then, of those groups that you mentioned, who do you interact with the most, and what are some challenges with that?
Right. So I'm in the sales department called Insurance Solutions Sales, or Solutions Insurance Sales, whatever. Yeah. It just means that I sell to the insurance companies instead of the government. Yeah. And I primarily specialize and sell the flood product. Okay. The flood stuff. So I engage the most with our solutions engineers. They are GIS experts, Geographic Information Systems experts, using tools like ArcGIS, QGIS, many others. Yeah. And they help our customers integrate our geographical information into their own systems and be able to use it and take decisions based on it. That's, I would say, the main one. Customer success, also interact with those guys. I do interact with the analysts quite a bit. We actually sit next to them physically in the office, so I get to ask them cool questions about how something works, why this result shows that versus that, how I could actually look at a SAR image, how can I see water in a SAR image, all of that, which I find fascinating. Yeah. It's nice that it's kind of accessible, that I could approach those people. But yeah, more commonly we kind of stay within our little nook of the sales and customer facing side team. Yeah. Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about ICEYE or satellites in general before we move on a little bit? We can always jump back, but if there's anything else on your mind right now.
I would just say that ICEYE is an amazing place to work. It has one of the best benefits packages I've ever seen, which they don't show off enough. Really? I had no idea about any of these benefits before they hired me. the flexibility with which they allow you to work from home, work from abroad, work in ESPO. Salary's good.
Nice.
More important than all of that, the people around you are all incredible.
Nice.
Very smart, hardworking, competent people. And if anything, I had wanted to replicate the SSP environment. And I think that's the closest I'll ever get to replicating it. Because everybody there is so interesting, and you can really strike up a deep conversation with a lot of people there. And a lot of people there share your interests and love for space and passion for learning and knowledge and curiosity. So you're surrounded by people you'll love, and it's quite easy to make friends there and actually see outside of work and not just be colleagues, which is important when you move to a place like Finland, which can be like different than other countries that you're used to. So yeah, just big shout out to ICEYE being a great place to work. I hope to stay there for a long time, develop my career in space with them, contribute a lot to their progress as well. And if anyone out there is listening and wants to enter the space industry or switch jobs, you should check out ICEYE's career page and come join me here in ESPO. Not that ESPO is the only place you could work from. You could work from many places around the world for ICEYE, but ESPO is the best one.
Well, they have a very good ambassador, I think.
Thank you.
I've seen you work, and
yes,
they're lucky to have you. So
thank you.
Okay, let's talk briefly about sales. I think some people don't give it the credit that it deserves as an interesting activity. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone to improve their selling ability? Because selling, you sell all the time in your life. You sell yourself as an idea, or you're looking for a salary raise or something like this. You have to sell ideas everywhere in your life. It's very important. So is there a simple piece of advice you could pass on to help people with that?
There are many.
Okay.
I would say if I had to choose just one.
Well, hit me with as many.
We might be here for a while. I would say if I had to choose just one, I would say the most important sales skill might be counterintuitive. The most important sales skill is not talking.
Okay.
It's actually just listening.
Got it. Okay.
And that's what a lot of salespeople get very wrong.
Interesting.
And also why we have a bad rap, I think, for many reasons beyond that. But that's the biggest one.
Okay.
Because you go to a meeting, you think all you need to do is pitch and just like throw information at them for like 50 minutes in a 1 hour meeting and hope something sticks. That's like the worst form of sales. When I see a salesperson doing that, I cringe so hard. What I do is kind of like an 80-20 rule. Okay. So 80% of the meeting time should be them talking.
Really? And
20% is me responding to what they've said. Right? So when you do that, your sales pitch becomes so much more powerful because you're tailoring it really to the problems that they have exposed to you.
Got it. And
showing them how our solution would solve that problem. If we don't call it 80-20 rule, another good metric is, sales coffees used to be a popular thing before COVID. You'd take someone out to coffee and you'd have a coffee meeting.
Right.
Less so nowadays because everything's kind of Zoom, kind of virtual, whatever. But let's say you were out with someone, you were having coffee.
Yeah.
So
you should be drinking a lot.
My coffee will probably be done, by the time I'm done my coffee, their coffee is like barely touched because they're just talking for so long.
Yeah. Kind of like your coffee right now.
Exactly.
Oh, you finished it. Okay.
Well, that coffee was great.
Oh, nice.
Yes, you know me and my coffee.
Absolutely.
I love to get your coffee, but anyway, that's a separate topic.
This is such good advice. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Very so just and this is like a life advice.
Yeah.
And I think sales has so much transferable skills to life skills and people skills and empathizing and just being a good person. You can be a really good person and a good salesperson. They're not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
People think they are.
Yeah.
You have to be aggressive and you have to force products onto people.
Yeah.
And fair enough, some salespeople do operate that way. That's not my style at all. I like to be an empathetic salesperson,
Yeah.
really hear people's problems
And like,
and
can I help you?
try to help them.
Here's actually the ways I can
Exactly.
help you.
And there are moments where you have to be honest with them and yourself and be like, actually, what you just described, we can't solve for you.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to just say that at the moment. Like, don't force someone to buy something they don't need, because as soon as they buy it, few months later down the line, they're gonna notice, hey, I actually hate this product. It didn't solve anything.
Refund.
And they're gonna, they're just gonna like hate your company. They're gonna hate you, and they're never gonna come back and be a repeat customer. And most companies want repeat customers because that's how real recurring revenue is made, compared to a one-off, one-time sale. And you have a reputation to protect too, right? So we shouldn't be so short-termist. I think that's another piece of advice in life and in sales. Always consider the long-term perspective alongside kind of short-term gains.
Got it.
So yeah.
Amazing. Very nice. Any other tidbits to share that can help people? Because I'm loving where this is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've delivered so many when I was at ICEYE.
Right.
I delivered a lot of sales trainings.
Yeah.
So I've delivered a lot of sales training, and so I'm very passionate about this. I could talk about it for hours. Let me see. I also delivered something called empathy sales, which is selling with empathy, which is basically like try to put yourself in the customer's shoes. It's related to the listening part, right? And it's a little bit about not company needs only, but the human need. It gets a little bit into human psychology. So let's say you are a new executive. You are like 3 months into this new role, and your predecessor left you a mess. And it's your job to fix it. As a good salesperson, I would have done my research on this company. I would have known that there was a mess, assuming this information is public. And sometimes these new executives would post on LinkedIn, like, this is my manifesto. This is my goal for the next year, especially with public trading companies, like the ones I work with in insurance. They always state their goals to their investors, to their stakeholders, and so on. So I would have read all that stuff before the meeting. And then my mindset is, okay, so let's call this random person Christina. Right? So Christina's now a little bit stressed. She has a lot of stuff to fix. She's publicly declared her goals, which I now have memorized. And in that meeting, I'm going to ask, hey, like, how have you settled into your new job? Do you feel that you're on track to achieve this goal that you stated online? And all of a sudden, you're kind of not talking about business anymore. You're not speaking with, let me throw a random name. You're not speaking with Allianz anymore. You're speaking with Christina. And the more human connection you build, the more likely this person will trust you, the more they will like you. And actually, like, it's the person that makes the buying decision at the end of the day, not the company. So it's not like I'm trying to manipulate her.
No.
I'm still not going to sell her something she doesn't need. But if I do truly believe that this product will help her goals,
best way to help her,
then the company benefits. I will convince Christina, if it's true, that buying will help her achieve her goals, secure her legacy within the company. And then all of a sudden, you've secured this amazing relationship with someone. So that's how I've actually done sales when I was with ICEYE. And some of these customers were my references when I applied for later jobs.
No way.
Because, you know, I stayed in touch with them. And
you sold them so well.
Yeah, we became not friends, but really good, close network. And they just testified to how well I did the sales thing. And then subsequently stayed with them after the sale had finished to deliver on the promises I made throughout the sales process.
Got it.
So yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So maybe can you briefly describe what ICEYE is for those interested? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
ICEYE is one of the largest, if not the largest, youth leadership development organization. Mm-hmm. It's entirely youth-led, which means all the leaders and all the members are between 18 and 30 usually. We kind of operate on the idea that you should be constantly forced and thrown into the fire, metaphorically, to learn and grow as a person. So I had my first business-to-business sales job at the age of 18.
Wow.
I was selling to, multi-million-dollar companies. I was selling to small and medium companies. Mm-hmm. Some of these ICEYE products. And then at the age of 20, I was a national vice president of sponsorship, selling to Canada's largest companies: Air Canada, RBC, VRL, the biggest banks, Scotiabank, all of these guys, right? So I was meeting people well above my station at the age of 20, 21. Yeah. And at the age of 21 and 22, I led and hosted a multi-million-dollar company, which was ICEYE Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to lead that company through the turmoil of COVID and the pandemic and make sure we don't go bankrupt.
Jesus.
So all of those experiences and many more around the world that other people have been having is what gives ICEYEkers, as we call ourselves, such phenomenal leadership skills and also life skills, knowing yourself, resilience, all of these great traits that make you successful as a person are developed through practical experiences in challenging environments, as we call it. Wow. So that's what ICEYE is all about. Yeah. It's been around since 1948. Wow. It started in Europe. Around 7 countries founded it. Yeah. In Europe after the World War, as a way of ensuring peace and cross-cultural understanding. So our vision is to achieve peace through cross-cultural understanding. So that's why we started with exchanges, physically moving people between borders, between countries that were previously enemies. And we kept that going until today. We still do exchanges. Yeah. We still facilitate cross-cultural understanding, but we do so much more. Okay. And the focus shifted from just being an exchange organization to being a leadership development organization. Okay. And we developed that through the managing and execution of the exchange program, but we also have events like conferences that are kind of like training seminars where I would have delivered those sales sessions, for example. Okay. We have volunteer programs, we have paid programs, we have many different types of things. Nice. So it's an amazing, amazing organization. And if you're between 18 to 30, you should check it out to join. Yeah. If you're older than that, you should support the organization and still attend those conferences because they're open to everybody. Yeah. And you can even join the board of advisors or board of directors of any ICEYE organization around the world, including ICEYE International, which is based in Montreal. Yeah, that's about it.
Amazing. Okay. So we talked about sales. Another thing I'd love to hear from you about is leadership. Do you think everyone can be a leader? Yeah, let's start with that. Are there practical skills that they can pick up?
Yeah. I think it's a fundamental belief at ICEYE that everybody can be and should be developed into a leader, but only if you are willing to take the steps, right? And so basically we have a leadership development model that is basically a roadmap to becoming a leader. Cool. And the execution of this model happens throughout your time at ICEYE. ICEYE. The names are super similar. Yes, this is going to be confusing. So we have the leadership development model at ICEYE. Yeah. I kind of presented it a little bit at SSP, but 10 minutes was too short to really get into it. Okay. And so we believe that a leadership should be solution oriented. Okay. That's one of the skills. which means every problem you try to look at it from a solution perspective. How can I solve this? As opposed to like, just end up being like, oh my God, I'm never going to solve this, give in to the problem. That's being solution oriented. Every leader should be a world citizen, aware of how other parts of the world have leaders, how they view leadership, how differences in culture affect leadership as well. Being aware of what's happening in general in the world, events and conflicts and so on. So just being aware, because as a leader, you will very likely be leading teams that are formed from many different cultures nowadays. And being aware of how other people manifest their skills and contribute to the team, depending on where they come from. That's super important. A leader should empower others. So uplift those around you, that you yourself and others are able to like believe that they can achieve something that they never thought possible. So give them that confidence, put them in challenging environments that they can thrive, but while supporting them, and really show them and inspire them that I've done it in the past as, someone who's been in the organization for 6 years. So you can too. Like, I didn't have any special sauce. Like, I just worked hard and did my thing. And you should be self-aware. And this is one of the most amazing tenets of being a leader. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What skills do you have and what do you need to work on? And what makes you happy? What makes you sad? In which kind of environments do you thrive? In which do you struggle? All of that is being self-aware. So actually, a lot of the self-awareness that I have also came from this organization. Because they forced me to think about stuff that I've never considered thinking about before. So that's the 4 qualities of a leader: leadership development qualities.
Okay.
But there are also like the actual methods. There's a journey. It's like inner and outer journey, and how do you develop them? You develop them by practical experiences in challenging environments, all that stuff. I don't want to get into the full thing. Just search ICEYE leadership development model. The full program will come up, and you can just steal it, try to implement it in your own life, or join ICEYE and they'll help you with it. So it's an amazing concept, and absolutely everybody, if they follow that model or similar leadership development models, it's not like ICEYE is the only one that does it, but we do it very well. Then you can become a leader. Awesome.
Okay, so this is going to be rapid fire, and it's going to be kind of overrated versus underrated, or like which of these two things is better. Okay, so we'll get quick answers from you. You don't have to justify it if you don't want. You can just state.
Soundbite answers.
Yes. Okay. So first one, let's go with Finnish sauna culture.
Underrated.
Okay. You want to give a brief explanation why?
Sauna has so many health benefits, including mental ones, as you have experienced yourself.
Yes.
This feeling of exhilaration and of happiness and the tingles on your body from cold and hot and everything. So sauna is amazing. Everybody should be doing it regularly in their routine.
Awesome. Remote work, underrated or overrated?
Underrated, but with an asterisk.
Okay.
I think you need both. You do need to have collaborative physical work, but you should allow for a healthy amount of remote work.
Okay. Public transport in Helsinki.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I don't know which side of underrated or overrated that is.
Is it underrated?
I guess underrated.
Yeah,
if it's so good.
Okay.
Everything runs on time.
Okay.
Very reliable.
Awesome. Living in a capital city. Have you lived in many capital cities?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Living in a capital city then. Underrated or overrated?
Overrated.
Overrated. Okay.
I would happily live in second, third largest cities versus capitals.
Interesting. Co-working spaces. Like I'm trying to think of an example.
Way overrated.
Overrated.
Like WeWork and all those things.
Exactly.
And it's
yeah.
Nah.
Okay.
If the company has an office, I'd rather just do that.
Okay. Work-life balance, underrated or overrated?
Underrated. Not enough people care about
everyone
the balance.
talks about work-life balance.
Yeah,
right?
they talk about it.
Okay.
Do they actually do it though? Probably not.
True.
So even more
Yeah.
thought, effort needs to be put into that.
You think something great can be created while still maintaining a work-life balance?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Awesome. Some would argue, not me, but some would argue that in order to create something truly great, you can just say fuck the balance for a little while.
It's possible that there's little sprints you'll have.
Yeah.
And that's acceptable.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like your aggregate life overall here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Intuition in decision making.
Mm-hmm. Overrated or underrated?
Yeah. Like instinct, gut feeling.
I think I don't use gut feeling that much. I try to find some practical, logical, factual reason to make decisions.
Not always possible.
Not always possible.
With urgent decisions, I suppose. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have to be on the fence on that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, which I'm not usually on the fence on things, but that one I have to be.
Okay, perfect. Sleep. Sorry, that's such a shit one. Okay.
Sleep.
Yeah, you can never rate that too highly. It will always be underrated.
Always
right?
underrated.
Yeah, okay.
People should sleep.
Yes.
You know, if you want to live a healthy life, sleep and get good quality sleep too.
Yeah. Here's a better one. Intermittent fasting.
Overrated.
Overrated? Yeah.
So
have you tried
overrated.
it?
I have not tried it.
Not on purpose, but you've done it.
I've tried it as a Muslim.
Yeah, okay, yeah, true.
Right? They stole it from us. That's
Right.
what Western cultures do all the time. They just adopt something that's been done for thousands of years and be like, new idea.
Yeah.
And like, no.
Yeah.
You did not invent turmeric, for example. Like the Indians had it for centuries.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. The role of luck in success.
Overrated a little bit.
Okay.
Because you generate more luck by actually doing something. Like if you just wait around to get lucky, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you do more things, you'll get more lucky.
Awesome. Okay, minimalism as a lifestyle.
Underrated. I lived a minimalist lifestyle for 2.5 years as a nomad.
Yeah.
Very few belongings, living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
Not even a suitcase, like a backpack.
And you were happy.
And I owned almost nothing except my laptop and whatever. I was very happy. I didn't feel like I was missing much. Yeah.
Okay. Public speaking skills.
Not enough people have it or practice it.
Okay.
So underrated. More people should know it.
The significance of networking for career advancement.
Still underrated. Not enough people, again, invest in their networks. And I got the job at ICEYE because of my network.
There you go.
So,
okay. The necessity of a college degree in today's job market, maybe specifically in the space industry.
I think space industry, it's almost mandatory.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely needed a bachelor minimum to get this job.
What about masters then? Let's go a bit higher.
If you're doing a technical role, you probably need master's degree, like an engineer, scientist, and so on.
Yeah.
Data analyst. If you are doing a less technical like me, I got in with a bachelor.
Okay. Nice. The influence of early morning routines on success.
Huge.
Yeah. Go to bed early, get up early.
Go to bed early, get up early, work out in the morning, have a beautiful cup of coffee.
Sauna, maybe.
I also do sauna in the morning.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
And I get to work at 10 because ICEYE allows that flexibility.
Okay.
And I'm ready to freaking destroy my tasks. I just blow through them. By the time it's like 3, I would have
Nothing can stop you.
I would have done 2-3 days of work in like one day because of a good start to the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everybody's a morning person though. Some people get their energy at night. those people are psychopaths. Even though that's probably like 50% of the population,
Yeah, you're
if not
sitting across
more.
from one.
Yeah, if not more. I think morning people are the minority,
Yeah, well, it
but they're a strong minority.
requires an element of discipline.
Sure.
Which is in finite supply. Discipline,
Sure.
I suppose, yeah. Physical books over ebooks.
Oh, I love physical books.
Yeah.
As a minimalist traveler, I
Yeah.
couldn't own as many physical books,
Right.
so I had my beautiful Kindle.
Yeah.
But now that I'm more settled and have a physical location,
Yeah.
I'm definitely buying more physical books.
Okay. A digital detox. So deleting all social media, getting an old Nokia, for example.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
The role of technology is so important in our lives nowadays.
Sure.
You should and can have days where you unplug, where you go off into the forest, where you go off into the sea or whatever. That's really important. But you can't eliminate technology in your life. No way.
Learning a second language.
Oh my God.
Underrated.
Underrated.
Okay.
If you're a unilingual person, go get yourself a second language.
Monolingual?
Monolingual, yes, monolingual probably.
Okay.
Go get yourself a second language.
Okay.
It has been proven to literally expand and create new neural pathways in your brain.
Interesting.
So it actually makes you a smarter person.
Right.
Yeah.
Company culture.
Still underrated.
Okay.
People don't actually prioritize company culture when they're making decisions. They just look at salary and benefits.
Yeah.
But you can have a very good salary and hate your life at the company.
Sure.
So, no, underrated.
Home cooked meals versus eating out.
Oh my God. Home cooked meals,
Really?
easily.
Yeah.
Especially my home cooked meals. They're so good.
What if you're a shit cook? Get better.
Well, some people just don't like cooking, and like, you know, for me, cooking's so therapeutic, and it's that beautiful interaction of science and art and chemistry, because science is really, or cooking is really chemistry, and art comes into like the plating and like the smells and like all that stuff, and making it look pretty and all that good things. So if you really just don't know how to cook, fine, eat out, have a good meal. And when you're tired and lazy, you don't want to cook for 3 hours. But let's say on average, home cooked meals are just so homey and great, and like they have a different vibe, because there's so much more love in a home cooked meal than a meal that you get outside in a restaurant.
Chinese food. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Wow.
The problem is most people that eat Chinese food are not eating Chinese food.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to grow up in Toronto, where there's a big Chinese population. There's a Chinatown as well.
Yeah.
And you go there, and the menus are fully in Chinese.
Okay.
So I would take my Chinese friends with me to help.
Nice.
And they would order like such amazing food.
Yeah.
Like real Chinese food. And again, there's actually not really something called Chinese food, because the country's so big.
Right.
There's regional foods.
Yeah. Like Szechuan,
for example.
Okay.
Shanghainese cuisine, for example, uses a lot of sugar and sweet stuff.
Okay.
And they have a cook with a lot of vegetables. It's very healthy.
Yeah.
Lots of tofu, lots of mushrooms, lots of meats as well, sure. But I'm not into pork, even though that's like a big thing there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of naturally vegan and vegetarian foods available in the Chinese cuisine.
Okay.
So
most people are getting some westernized, like low fidelity coffee.
Exactly. Panda House.
Food.
No.
Okay.
Like, just get rid of that stuff.
Yeah.
Go to a real local Chinese restaurant run by immigrants and ask them to recommend real dishes to you and explore proper food. Chinese food is amazing.
Awesome. Voting. In local elections.
I guess underrated.
Underrated.
Because young turnout is notoriously bad.
Right.
I'm allowed to vote on things in Espoo politics.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, even though I just arrived.
Yeah.
As a resident of Espoo, I can vote on municipal elections and municipal kind of things.
Yeah.
So I'm looking out for that, and when there's something to vote on, I will go, because you should participate in the democratic system that you're a part of, right?
Cool. Yeah.
And if you can vote in national, provincial, state elections, you should do it. Make sure our young youth voice is heard, so that politicians fear us and actually do things that would benefit young people and not just older people who are much more likely to go out and vote.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of our own fault that politicians don't care about young people. Well, they do.
Yes.
Nowadays, because we're becoming more vocal,
Right.
especially Gen Z. Shout out to Gen Z.
Yeah.
But you millennials out there who don't go vote, some Gen Z who don't go vote, we should vote.
Okay.
If you're in a democratic system.
Got it. Online education versus in person.
There's a good time to be doing online stuff. Some kind of things are better learned or can be learned online. But I think something like a language, for example, where it's super collaborative and you need to bounce off other people and hear how other people pronounce things and whatever, that I would say online learning for that is quite difficult. But something more individualistic, like learning geographic information systems, I could probably do that on my own online.
Right.
Coding, same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on the subject.
Dark humor.
I love it.
Is it underrated?
In today's political climate,
People
are too sensitive, I would say.
Interesting.
Everything has become non-PC, non-politically.
And you think
correct.
humor and comedy is the frontier to push that?
I think humor should be given get out of jail free card.
Yeah, a bit more leeway than like a politician.
A lot more leeway because satire is how we process a lot of stuff. And comedians show us how ridiculous we're being.
Okay.
When someone is racist, for example, or when someone is like, I don't know, homophobic or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Even though their jokes might seem that way, that they're homophobic or racist, the point is not to be that. The point is to expose society and how ridiculous society is being by joking about these things. Right. And that's what satire does so well.
You wouldn't go to a comedy show in North Korea, for example, or like China. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. The importance of failure in growth as a person.
Underrated. You need to fail 10 times before you succeed once.
Interesting. Solo travel.
Underrated. Everybody needs to do it.
I need to find something that you think is overrated.
Yeah. There were a few, but less.
Yes. Traditional news media.
Traditional news media.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like CNN, BBC.
There would have been a time when I would say underrated.
Okay.
I might say overrated these days.
Right.
Because so much of this traditional news media is becoming like super corrupt, incredibly biased, and is being bought out by billionaires who have a big agenda, and we're trusting them too much, even though they're presenting very biased information.
Right.
So alternate news medias who can still kind of be credible are now important part of the puzzle.
Okay.
So overrated.
All right. I think that pretty much wraps us up.
Unless
there's anything that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on.
I guess we can close out with the satellite picture story.
Yeah, please. Yeah, tell that story. It's amazing.
Yeah, something amazing happened recently. So one of the many, many benefits that being an employee at ICEYE, on your birthday month, you are allowed to task, as we call it, a satellite, to take a picture anywhere on the Earth, with some restrictions, where you want. So you give them the coordinates, you give them the imaging mode, because we actually have different imaging modes with different resolutions and swath widths and so on, not to get into that right now. But Google imaging mode, ICEYE, if you're interested. Okay. So I chose... What did I choose? I can't remember now. Okay, I chose an imaging mode that would be appropriate for the for the task, and I put it over that very same Mediterranean property in Egypt that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, that started my love for space, with the meteor and the shooting stars and all that stuff. So for so many reasons beyond just that place is my heaven on earth. It's where I go every year in the summer to reset. And so I tasked this particular part, and I actually don't have access to the software that tells you when the satellite picture will be taken. So I was in Egypt. I'm on my way to this property now.
Yeah.
And I remembered that I had tasked like 1 or 2 weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago, the satellite to take a picture of this. And I still haven't heard back on like any details. So as I was driving there, I was like, how crazy would it be if on the day or the 3 days that I'm there at this Mediterranean property, that the satellite would take a picture on that day.
It's a crazy coincidence.
So I was like, there's no way, right?
Yeah.
I was like, chances are 0 to none. But just to exhaust all my options and to be extra sure, I asked a really good friend of mine at the company to check for me where the satellite was and if it's going to take a picture and when.
Yeah.
So he looked up the satellite, and he'd sent me a picture of the tasking history. And actually there were 3 tasking attempts that not failed, but it's more like another higher priority task forced my birthday image to be canceled.
Yeah.
Because there was something more important to capture that day. So that's why it was so amazing, because there were actually 3 other times that the picture could have been taken that wasn't. And on the 4th attempt, I was there.
Yeah, next in queue.
I was next in queue. It was that very same night that the satellite was taking a picture that I was arriving to the property. And he told me, the task is tonight. And I was just blown away.
Crazy.
It really, really was a low probability event.
Yes.
And so I already was like, okay, thinking hat on right now, what can I do to leave an impression on this picture? So I started Googling something called a corner reflector, which is basically a way to focus radar waves back at the sensor to make a little glint to basically say, I was here. So we built a do-it-yourself DIY corner reflector from foil and cardboard. Not a very good one in retrospect, but we were trying. I then looked up at which time the satellite would fly over our sky. I looked up the azimuth and elevation of the satellite for you astronomy nerds. Azimuth being kind of like where on the horizon east-west would it be, elevation being what kind of how many degrees above the horizon it would be. And so it was something like east and maybe 35 degrees above the horizon, something like that, where it would start taking the picture.
Okay.
All right, so beautiful ICEYE X19, the 19th satellite that we launched, was the one that was responsible for my picture. All of my party that was there, so my brother and my 2 cousins, by the way, the same brother and 2 cousins that were present in that meteor event when I was younger than 10 years old.
My God.
Yes, the very same people.
Wow.
I was like, guys, the satellite is taking a picture tonight. And they were blown away.
Cool.
And we created this new memory now in this amazing kind of circularity moment where it kind of connected myself to my childhood self. And yeah, we just sat at 2:30 in the morning. We looked towards the part of the sky that the satellite was taking the picture. We looked up, tracked it with tracking software. And at the moment it was taking the picture, we were just like imagining seeing it. You know, it's too small to see with the naked eye, but we were just using our imaginations. And there it was, ICEYE X19. It took the picture. downlinked it to the earth a few hours later.
Yeah.
And then the next day I got what's called the quick look image.
Okay.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I could see very clearly our property.
Oh, wow.
I could not see us
Yeah.
or our corner reflector.
Okay.
So that didn't work.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Still
Still amazing to know that.
Still amazing to know that
you're
we
in
were
that
there.
image, you know,
We
yeah.
created that memory and that that picture that will live on forever.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, because I have all these amazing people at ICEYE as colleagues, right? One of them supported me to actually know that it was happening. The other supported me in analyzing our SAR image and teaching me about how to look at SAR stuff and how to do corner reflectors properly, things like that for the next time. And then a marketer helped me put the classic green ICEYE gradient on Photoshop, which you see in most of our images, because the SAR image is just gray.
Right.
It's not green, if you thought that. So I put the green ICEYE gradient on it. I put some what we call not master data, like what's that word called? Metadata of the satellite, which I got, which is like, what time, day of acquisition, mode, imaging mode, resolution, exact coordinates, that sort of thing. I put that on the picture, and now that picture is ready to print. I haven't printed it yet, but I'm going to print it and frame it here on my place in Espoo.
Nice.
And I'm going to be able to look at it every single day and just remember this kid who I was more than 10 years ago, who looked up at the sky, saw a shooting star and said, wow, that's amazing. And then in a way, a decade or more later, another shooting object, another natural or fake moon, a satellite, man-made satellite, captured an image from space in the same location where I started falling in love with space and started wondering about it. And with the same people that I was on that day, on both days. And it's hard to describe in words, really. It's like, I can't believe that this is my life today.
Yeah.
And that I managed to get here. So I'm very happy about that fact. I'm dumbfounded. I am, elated, satisfied. I'm full of gratitude. Disbelief, so many other words, right? So yeah, ICEYE gave me that opportunity. I gave myself that opportunity by getting here, by going to SSP, by making so many different decisions in life that led to this point. And yeah, I just wanted to end with that, end where we began, as I like to do.
Thank you.
That picture is up on LinkedIn and on my Instagram.
Okay.
If anyone wants to take a look at it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Very full circle moment.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good time to wrap up. Farouk, thank you very much for your time. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Until next time.